The other thing that's really interesting is if we look at your cash inflow, and this is going back to 2018, and compare that with your cash outflow every month, your expenses, right? Then that tells us even more of a picture, right? So here, this sort of darkish gray line that is above the January and February month and right about equal in April, maybe a smidge above where July is, that line represents the approximation of my average business expenses in any of these months, right? And it's not perfect. It's just an average, right? I mentioned December expenses always tend to be a little bit higher. My May expenses tend to be a little higher as well. And there are other sort of nuances you can pay attention to. But if I'm just looking at average expenses on a monthly basis, that's about where my line is. So now as you look at this, right, the months that make you nervous are definitely January, February, and May, and September, but also probably April and July, right? So it's interesting to think about how you're planning the timing of your expenses and how much control you have over them to figure out if you can align them with when you are cash rich or minimize paying things when you are cash poor, right? So this is just mostly focused on the inflow side of when cash is coming in, but it's important to also think about when cash is going out as well. And you can present that cash going out as a sort of straight line average amount, or you can look at it as its own line if you wanted to compare a little bit more closely. Anyone have comments or questions or observations about this?
Elaine, this is James. I'm not sure why you've used an average for expenses, but actual for cash. How does that inform the cash flow picture? It seems like actual to actual would be a more effective way to do it.
I think it depends on how predictable your expenses are. So okay. In my business, expenses they don't vary a ton month to month. So for absolute accuracy, you are absolutely right. Comparing actual to actual would be your best bet kind of option. But mine only fluctuate a couple of $100s in a given month. So because of that, using an average is a nice way to kind of approximate, how close are we getting in some of these months, as opposed to spending the time to plot out actual to actual. But if you're in a business or you're working with, commission expenses or public art expenses, for example, where expenses do kind of wildly fluctuate from month to month, looking at an average might actually be misleading for you.
Got it. Thank you.
Absolutely.